what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government.
More doublethink going on in Libya. It appears that the Marines are preparing. You know, we send Marines out off the coast of Libya. Marines go on land. So I wouldn't buy this no-fly zone, no military action, we're just going to bomb specific targets routine. The U.S. To deploy more ships to support Libya planning. That's a Reuters report by Phil Stewart. The United States will deploy additional amphibious ships to the Mediterranean, the military said on Friday, as part of the Obama administration's plans for responding to ongoing violence in Libya. The USS Bataan Amphibious Ready Group will deploy on March 23rd, ahead of its original schedule in order to relieve units from the USS Kearsarge. The Amphibious Ready Group currently positioned in the Mediterranean Sea, it said in a statement. The arriving group includes amphibious assault ship USS Bataan, based in Virginia, and other ships. A related article, another illegal war of slaughter, couched in humanitarian doublespeak. After the corporate-owned media's failed attempt in February 2011 to portray the Libyan unrest as unarmed protesters being brutalized by Gaddafi, reports began trickling in of what was actually a full-scale rebellion with weapons coming across the border from Egypt. These reports are now confirmed, as large-scale operations to supply the rebels with weapons have now been admitted by both the U.S. and Egyptian governments. The Wall Street Journal, quoting a senior U.S. official, claimed that the latest Egyptian operation to arm Libyan rebels has started several days ago and is ongoing. The Wall Street Journal reiterates what many globalist think tanks have been saying all along, that the operation to overthrow Libya, despite being a Western project, should be led by the newly reordered and shook-up Arab states. The Wall Street Journal concedes that the U.S. wanted to avoid being seen as having taken a leadership role in any military action against Mr. Gaddafi, after its invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan fueled anger and mistrust with Washington throughout the region. We are left to believe that the U.S. deceptively meddling in Libya by proxy somehow is supposed to alleviate this anger and regain lost trust. Sure, of course. They hate us because we are serving the globalist needs. We are serving the controllers. The controllers have hijacked our government. If all goes well for the globalists, this servile proxy Arab conglomerate, after being marshaled to raid Libya on behalf of the West, will then be organized and ready to turn its attention towards Iran at the behest of their globalist masters. The Wall Street Journal, in their article, recognizes this new servile fervor as an unusually robust diplomatic response from Arab states. Brookings Institute policy wonk Kenneth Pollock's The Real Military Options in Libya outlines the full array of plans the U.S. has at its disposal. It has already been working ceaselessly starting mid-February to build a consensus for and to put into motion. Several of these options, including covert support, are now already admittedly in play. Meanwhile, those still under the illusion that humanitarian concerns drive the UN Security Council's decision to authorize a Libyan no-fly zone would do best to refresh their memories of how the globalists used the UN to become mired in a decade of war with Afghanistan, Iraq, and now Pakistan. It should also be remembered that the neocon cadre of the globalist cartel, within the confines of the Project for a New American Century, engineered the entire war on terror, including their wish for a new Pearl Harbor a year before 9/11. Today, the Project for a New American Century exists as William Kristol's foreign policy initiative and is once again writing letters reminiscent of the ranting insanity signed off by America's leading neocons, urging for one foreign intervention after another. They also played a central role in the Ground Zero mosque hoax in 2010. Their latest letter is addressed to President Obama under the title, "Foreign Policy Experts Urge President to Take Action to Halt Violence in Libya." In it, they call for not only a no-fly zone to be initiated by the U.S., but also for airstrikes and the official recognition of the Libyan National Transitional Council. They go on to In it, they call for not only a no-fly zone to be initiated by the U.S., but also for airstrikes and the official recognition of the Libyan National Transitional Council. They go on to insulating the state. Today, the United States and its allies should stand with the men, women, and children of Libya who seek a future of peace and dignity. We can only assume the neocon globalist ghouls of the Foreign Policy Initiative are referring to the same peace and dignity the Afghans and Iraqis are currently enjoying. The geopolitical and economic implications of a U.S. NATO-led military intervention directed against Libya are far-reaching. Libya is among the world's largest oil economies with approximately 3.5% of global oil reserves, more than twice those of the U.S. A war on Libya would have an immediate impact on the price of crude oil, the latter risen by 18% since the beginning of the insurrection in Libya. Currently stands at $104.42 a barrel for April delivery on the New York Mercantile Exchange, its highest level since the financial crash of 2008. Since August 2010, the price of oil has risen from $75.93 a barrel to $104.42. That's in March 2011, a hefty increase of 37.5%. A war directed against Libya would push the price of crude oil up to unabasably high levels, potentially triggering a global inflationary spiral which would result in the impoverishments of large sectors of the world population. A humanitarian war would be good for business. It serves the interests of the institutional speculators. It contributes to a further process of appropriation of money and wealth. Financial institutions which had prior knowledge or intelligence of the events in Egypt and Libya have already made billions of dollars in speculative gains in the futures and option markets for crude oil. These global financial and banking institutions, which placed their bets several months ago, have a vested interest in a war. The greater the turmoil and disruption of the crude oil market, the greater the speculative gains. Short-term speculative gains due to market volatility are also part of this process. Foreknowledge of the sequence of political or military events and how they affect markets, as well as control and manipulate financial news pertaining to those events, are an essential part of the betting process. In this regard, we are dealing with the workings of the world's commodity exchanges, the most important of which are the powerful CME Group, created following the merger of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the Board of Chicago Trade, and the New York Mercantile Exchange.